All right, so now we're going to prepare to scrape multiple URLs, and I want to bring you back to a couple of functions that we talked about earlier. One of them, the asleeper timeout, the other one being a run. Now, the nice thing about both of these things is they work hand in hand to really get the leverage of what async IO does, right? So we can run it, and we see that the iterations run at different speeds and they complete at different speeds. So what we want to do is kind of take this idea and add it into our running progress as well. So I'm going to bring this in here, put it underneath this, and I'm also going to move where my data frame related stuff is to the top. And then I'm going to scroll down a little bit more, and I'll actually comment these things out for a moment. And we'll take a look at this run here. So what we've got in run is I get two steps that probably should actually be one step, right? So we've got our links and our body. Both of those things could be done inside of Scraper. Like the Scraper itself can get the links as well. So I'm going to just move links in here to doing that. And we'll go ahead and use the body data itself. And so now this run function, what it actually should do is get the links, or well, really run and scrape multiple URLs. So that should be multiple URLs in here, much like we saw before where it was multiple iteration times. So I'm going to go ahead and copy parts of this into our run function here. And of course, the enumeration is now going to be URLs, and then it's going to be URL. And then we're going to pass create task. We're going to create the task of scraper, and we're going to pass in our URL here. I also actually want to add in my iteration, and I'll say I equals to -1. And then I'll also add in a timeout here. And I'll give that let's do 60 seconds. I know it said 30 seconds before, but let's just make it nice and long for us at 60. Okay. And so now I've got the possibility to also add it in here. So timeout equaling to 60. And so I have it in a number of places where I can reset the timeout. Okay. So I have it in as URLs now, right? So that means that down here, I just need to change this to being URLs and have it being an actual list of items that I can use. And syntax stuff. Okay. So it's getting closer, right? But it's not quite there, because what we've got here seems like it should work. I don't have the timeout yet, but let's go ahead and take a look at what happens with the results. Notice that I have the data frame gone, because we do want to take a look at the results prior to that. So let's make that new async scrape here, and let's run it and just see what the results are. We get a task in here. So it's called a canceled task. Now, why is it a canceled task? Well, it's because we actually never used these tasks. We never actually ran them. So up above, we did something for awaiting, if we did await of that run, that was actually something we did before with those other iterations. But with URLs and how we're working with this function, we need to do something slightly different. And what this is going to be is list of links equals to async io.gather. And we use gather to grab all of these create tasks links, all these results here. And this will actually run them for me, and then it will append them into a list of links. So the reason I know this is a list, it's essentially a list of lists. The reason I know that is because my scraper function, this right here, will return a list as well, or at least hopefully it will. And then therefore, this results list, which is what this is going to have a list of items. So hopefully that makes sense, but now we've got this. Let's go ahead and see it in action. And this right here, that's a problem. So it's saying future, exception, canceled error. What's going on here? Well, the exception was never retrieved. The problem is we didn't await this. As hopefully isn't incredibly surprising that whenever we call a synchronous type function, we need to await it. Even here, we didn't actually await anything, which is why it was called canceled, right? this is actually doing that awaiting of the create task. And therefore, now we can actually run this. So we run it, and it should give me a list of links. It's going to only have one list in here, or only one item, and that hopefully isn't that big of a surprise because we only passed one URL here. But it is giving us the actual data back. So naturally, our list of lists, we could actually combine them all into being one list. I'm just not going to do that quite yet because I want to have this timeout method in here. So the timeout I want to add is to actually getting the URL itself. So whatever that URL ends up being, I want to time out on that. So we want to use the wait for method here. So we're going to go ahead and simply just say async io.wait for, and this time we don't actually need to use a wait in front of that session, but rather here. And then what is our timeout? Well, we're going to pass in the argument from the scraper itself. And if you remember, wait for can run an exception, so we'll just do a try block here, and then we will catch that exception with async io.timeout error. And then here we'll go ahead and return an empty list, because again, get links should still give me back a list of items in here. Right? So as a default, even if there are no links that it actually finds, it will give me links back, which is good. Okay, so now I have a timeout. Let's actually try the timeout. I'll give it a 1 second timeout. This should actually go by pretty quickly and give me nothing back. Right, so it should try and open it up. It does try, and we get a list of lists here, which is always going to be the case until we change it. But it does give me and show me that my timeout's working, at least on my end. Right, so if their service takes longer than 60 seconds to respond, the timeout will happen, and it'll just give me an empty list, which is fine because we don't actually have to do anything with that empty list. Like we wouldn't have to, it wouldn't actually change our content at all. It wouldn't override it either, which is actually how we had it before. Before we did all the changes to the pandas data frame, it would have literally overridden the pickle that we had before, which is definitely not what we want. So now we've got a way to scrape multiple links. We can try this with other links, right? So if we go onto that website and just try and grab a few other links, we should get a result of multiple links. So I'm actually going to print out the, let's say, the length of results. So now, hopefully what it'll do is it'll give me 2 as the results here because of the URLs themselves. So let's go ahead and run that. Okay, and notice that it's got Chrome driver was started successfully. It gives me 2. So it actually started Chrome driver twice because it's doing 2 different scraping events, but it's doing it simultaneously. So again, I want to actually add in that start clock like we did up here. Okay, so yet again, we want to have start time.time. I'll put it, let's go ahead and actually pass it down through our functions. Okay, so we've got our start time here, and I'll just give it start equaling to none. And start equals the start, and then we'll pass it into our scraper. Start equaling to start, and start equaling to none. Okay, and so now I'm going to go ahead and print out. So if start is not equal to none, then I'm going to go ahead and get the end being the time.time minus start, and we'll go ahead and print out the iteration. So I took seconds. Okay, so let's go and try this. So it's going to take a moment, right? So the first lookup took 3 seconds. The second one took 4 seconds. The total time, we didn't actually put that one. So print total time is, let's go ahead and add an end here. This is the cool part, I promise. All right, so here we go. The total time should only take as long as the longest scraping event. And in this case, it says slightly longer. Just a little bit. You know, that's not a whole lot. But what it did was it actually went to 2 different URLs, scraped them, came back, and brought me the links. I don't actually know what the links are, but the multiple URL scraping event actually occurred. So from here on out, it's just a matter of taking some of those things, refining it, and then maybe getting more links, right? So eventually I'll just have all of the links that are related to all of these fabric items themselves, and I won't need to scrape any more links at all until maybe a week or a day or something like that. That will actually give me that. So we definitely still want to do that, and we will. But this is actually the key value here. I mean, if you stopped now and just started scraping some other site, you totally could. But one thing to keep in mind is we don't want to hammer their web page. I would say at max you do 5 or 10 at a time, and then maybe sleep in between each one, which we will definitely talk about as well going forward. But the general idea is you only run this every, 30 seconds or so. So again, you're not just absolutely hammering their servers, which also will maybe get your IP address banned from even opening up their webpage altogether, because the best websites will certainly do that.